You ever look at a sunset and think, I could definitely pour that into a mold, only to end up with something that looks like a melted crayon in a puddle of muddy dishwater?
Is that a confession, Tiger? Because your failed experiment shelf is looking a little crowded lately. I think I see three different shades of accidental sludge over there.
That's the tuition shelf, Alex. Every single one of those gray-brown blobs represents a day I thought I was smarter than the physics of light. I spent 8 hours last Tuesday trying to get a perfect deep violet for a river table, and instead, I managed to create a color that I can only describe as bruised eggplant in a basement.
It's the classic resin artist trap. You start with these beautiful neon pigments, and by the time the hardener kicks in, it looks like something you'd find behind a radiator. Today, we're actually going to fix that. We're doing a deep dive into color theory specifically for the resin world, because apparently, mixing red and blue doesn't always give you purple. Sometimes it gives you a headache.
More often than not, resin is a tricky beast because you're not just mixing paint on a flat surface, you're working with depth, transparency, and the fact that pigments behave differently when they're suspended in a clear plastic goo. If you don't respect the color wheel will absolutely disrespect your project.
Let's start with the basics then. Everyone remembers the primary colors from grade school: red, blue, yellow. But I've noticed that in the shop, red isn't always just red.
Exactly. If you're at the store and you grab a random red pigment and a random blue, you're playing Russian roulette with your palette. See, primary colors are the ancestors. They're the ones that supposedly can't be made from anything else. But in resin, different pigments have different undertones. If your blue has a hint of yellow in it, what we call a warm blue, and you mix it with a red that has a hint of orange, you're essentially introducing yellow into the mix.
And when you mix all three primaries together,
You get the dreaded brown, the mud. It's like when you were a kid and you tried to mix every flavor of soda at the fountain. Individually, they're great. Together, they're a crime.
so, step one for the folks at home: know your primaries. But talk to me about the tools of the trade. I see you using powders. I see these little dropper bottles of liquid. What's the difference? Because they don't look like they play the same way.
They really don't. Think of mica powders as the glamour of the resin world. They're basically ground up rocks coated in shimmer. When you stir those in, you aren't getting a flat color, you're getting a microscopic light show. The light bounces off each little flake. That's why you get those swirls, or that pearlescent look in a Greek turquoise or a gold glitter.
But those are usually opaque, right? You can't see through a mica pore very easily.
Correct. If you want that bottled ocean look where you can see the wood grain or the objects inside, you need resin dyes. Those are liquid. They're like putting a drop of food coloring in water. It tints the resin but keeps it clear.
And let me guess, the tigers of the world usually pour the whole bottle in on the first try?
Listen, I've been known to have a heavy hand, but resin dye is like high-octane chili oil. A single drop in a quart of resin can be the difference between vibrant sapphire and solid ink block. You have to be surgical. I usually put a drop on the end of a toothpick and just swirl it in. You can always add more, but you can't exactly unblue a batch of epoxy. Once it's in there, it's a permanent marriage.
Okay, so we've got our pigments. We've avoided the mud by picking clean primaries. Now, how do we actually make things look good? I've seen some projects that just look loud, like they're screaming at you.
That's usually a failure of color harmony. People get so excited by all the options that they use everything at once. It's the buffet plate approach to art.
So what's the secret? How do you choose a palette that doesn't hurt the eyes?
I usually lean on a few tried and true structures. The easiest is the monochromatic look. Pick one color, say a deep forest green, and then vary the value. Use a tiny bit of pigment for a light, misty green, then a heavy dose for a dark, moody green. When they swirl together in the mold, it looks sophisticated because they're all from the same family. They aren't fighting for attention.
It's like a gradient. Very safe, very classy. But what if I want some pop?
Then you go complementary. These are the colors opposite each other on the wheel. Blue and orange, purple and yellow. They're like that couple that's always bickering, but can't live without each other. They make each other look brighter. But here's the pro move. Don't use them in equal amounts. If you have a 50-50 split of orange and blue, it's a visual headache. But a big, deep blue casting with just a thin, vibrant vein of orange copper running through it, that's the stuff that sells for the big bucks.
Wait, I have to jump in here because I saw you do this last month. You were working on that charcoal and gold piece, and you kept adding just a tiny bit of white to everything. Why?
You caught me. White is the unsung hero of the workshop. In the color theory world, adding white creates a tint. But in resin, white does something magical. It provides lift.
Lift? Explain that like I'm 4 years old.
If you pour a semi-transparent blue over a dark wood like walnut, the darkness of the wood will eat the color. It'll just look black. But if you stir in a tiny, tiny speck of opaque white, not enough to make it pastel, just enough to catch the light, it makes the blue hover. It gives it a floor. It's like putting a mirror behind a stained glass window.
See, that's the kind of thing you don't find in the how-to pamphlets. It's all about how the light travels through the piece and hits the wood or the back of the mold and then comes back to your eye.
Exactly. You're not painting a fence, you're building a lens.
Let's talk about the oh no moments. The resin is mixed, the color is in, the clock is ticking because the pot life is disappearing. And you realize the color is totally wrong. Is there a reset button?
The reset button is usually a trash can. But if you're quick, you can pivot. If your color is too neon and looks like a 1980s windbreaker, you can tone it down by adding a microscopic amount of its complement. If your red is too fire engine, a tiny speck of green will pull it back into a more natural, earthy brick tone. It's like seasoning a soup. A little bit of salt balances the sugar.
But if you go too far, you're back to the mud.
Right back to the tuition shelf.
I'm going to start calling it that. Okay, what about temperature? I don't mean the room temperature, though that matters for curing. I mean color temperature. Does that actually matter when you're just making a coaster?
It's everything. Wood is naturally warm, lots of yellows, oranges, and reds. If you use a cool blue, one that leans towards purple, it can sometimes look a bit sterile or disconnected from the wood. But if you use a warm blue, one that leans toward teal or turquoise, it talks to the wood better. It feels like they grew up together.
We've talked a lot about the art side, but your workshop is basically a lab. Let's talk science. I've seen people try to color resin with things they found in the kitchen. Pigmently and Rhonda Chase both emphasize using actual epoxy pigments. Why can't I just use acrylic paint or some old house paint?
Oh man, I tried that once. Early in my career, I thought I was being clever. I used some water-based acrylic to save $10. The resin cured, sure, but it looked like it had a skin disease, bubbles everywhere, weird streaks. It was a disaster.
Because water and resin are mortal enemies?
They're like cats and vacuum cleaners. Resin is an oil-based chemical reaction. Water-based paints interfere with the molecular bonding. It can make the resin soft or bendy, or even leave it tacky forever. If you want to color resin, you use things that were born for resin. Mica powders, alcohol inks, or specialized liquid dyes. Even poor man's pigments like chalk pastels or certain spices, looking at you, turmeric, work better than water-based paint because they're dry.
Wait, did you just say turmeric? You've been raiding the spice cabinet?
Hey, don't knock it. It gives a gorgeous, semi-transparent yellow, but it smells like a curry house every time you sand it.
I can see the headline now. Tiger's Tables. They look great, but they make you hungry for tikka masala.
There are worse reputations to have. But seriously, the takeaway is compatibility is king. If your colorant has water in it, you're inviting a cloudy finish or a soft cure. It's not worth the risk.
Let's wrap this up with something practical. If someone is standing in their garage right now, staring at a bottle of clear epoxy and a kit of colors, what is the one thing they should do to avoid a heartbreak?
The white cup test. It's the closest thing to a get-out-of-jail-free card we have.
The white cup test?
Before you pour that resin into your expensive slab of walnut or your intricate silicone mold, take a small white plastic cup. Put a spoonful of your colored resin in there. The white background of the cup will show you the true color and the true opacity. In a clear mixing bucket, you might think it's transparent, but against that white plastic, you'll see if it's actually as thick as mud. It takes 10 seconds, and it has saved me from more bad pours than I can count.
It's like a rehearsal for the real show.
Precisely. Because in resin, there are no happy accidents once the chemicals start heating up. There's only what you planned and what you have to sand off tomorrow.
That sounds like a very expensive tomorrow.
It usually is. But that's how the lessons stick. You don't truly understand the color wheel until you've spent 4 hours with a belt sander removing a magenta mistake from a coffee table.
Well, hopefully we've saved a few people from that fate today.
That's the goal. Respect the wheel, start small with your drops, and for the love of all things holy, keep the water-based paint in the craft drawer where it belongs.
Thanks for the masterclass, Tiger. Your accidental sludge collection might be growing, but at least your advice is solid.
Just doing my part to keep the world a little less mud-colored. See you in the shop.